You're listening to the Auxiliary Gate Podcast, Kentucky's weekly horse racing discussion. And now, here are your hosts, Alan Schneider.
Woodson from the gun, play fake, step it up. He's throwing deep down the near sideline. He's got Johnson, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Kentucky! 13 is a lucky number.
Brandon Jaggers.
Glenn turns, leaves it with Scott. No! Hit at the 16. He did not get it. Victory, Kentucky! They have done it! Big Blue Madness on the football field at Commonwealth Stadium as number 1 goes down.
And me, CC Broadus.
7 seconds to play. Now 5. Here's how you count to 8. 3, 2, 1. And for the 8th time, college basketball's national championship trophy is coming home to Kentucky. The Wildcats defeat Kansas 67-59.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 46 of the Auxiliary Gate Podcast. I'm CC Broadus, broadcasting from the international media headquarters of the Auxiliary Gate Podcast in beautiful Bloomfield, Kentucky. And I'm joined by Alan Schneider from his palatial estate in the suburbs of Fern Creek, Kentucky. Alan, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. It's funny hearing the phrase palatial estate and suburbs of Fern Creek in the same sentence, but okay.
Well, if I had your money, I'd burn mine. So just remember that. Alan, we had a huge weekend of Kentucky Derby prep races. We want to talk about those right now before we get to our guest. Let's start with the UAE Derby won by Rebels Romance. I say this every year, that the UAE Derby winner always looks really, really impressive. And you would think at some point along the way that a winner would come over here and actually threaten in the Kentucky Derby. But, Alan, that hasn't been the case, has it?
That has not been the case. I guess I'm guilty of just automatically discounting the winner of that race. I understand why Churchill Downs does it. I kind of feel bad that they may take a spot from someone in this country. That said, Godolphin's hand is loaded. I know they won the race. Do they come? Do they not come, since they have so many contenders here? I mean, we'll see. But honestly, I didn't pay a heck of a lot of attention to it. Nothing against the winner, nothing against the connections, but history is what it is. So,
yeah, let's talk about a race that probably has a little bit more impact here, and that was the Jeff Ruby Stakes at Turfway on Saturday, and it was won by Wesley Ward's Like a King, who is a son of Palace Malice, and he swept a victory late to win the race over a fast-closing Sainthood. First of all, your reaction to the winner of the Jeff Ruby Stakes. I've almost forgot the name. I keep wanting to call it the Spiral, but it's the Jeff Ruby Stakes.
I thought it was a good effort. Everybody's going to automatically knock and discount the horses from Turfway Park. I think that's slightly foolish. I don't know if they're the top-level contenders, but Like the King has shown quite a bit of affinity for coming from off the pace, stalking the pace, being on the lead. There's a certain sense of tractability that you always like with a horse like that. He did win a mile and 1/8, and the runner-up Sainthood, I believe, is only the third lifetime start for Sainthood and Todd Fletcher. That horse came rolling. I'm not automatically going to discount these horses like everybody else has, because let's face it. I mean, with some of the results we've seen recently, outside the top 2 or 3, everything's kind of a bit of a mishmash between number 4 and number 15 right now, right? So, I like both the top 2 horses in that race.
You Like the King earned a buyer of 86. Not super fast, but I'm with you. I think Sainthood had a really interesting trip in the race. He was up close to the pace early, then he kind of got shuffled back a little bit, and then really came flying late. So I think that horse has some upside. Just
no doubt. Still learning the game, and third lifetime start, and the horse really did come rolling. That no matter what people say, that wasn't a bad field. I thought that was one of the more evenly matched Derby preps you're going to see this year.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And then quickly we'll talk about the Florida Derby and that was won by Known Agenda, son of Curlin, for the Todd Pletcher barn, and he swept the victory. The disappointment of the race, of course, was Greatest Honor, who finished third. But your reaction to Known Agenda in the Florida Derby?
Well, before we get to that, I mean, we talk about a disappointment. Going back to the Jeff Ruby, Tarantino. I mean, I'm not sure what happened to Tarantino. Was last by 30 lengths all the way around the track. I'm not really sure what happened. The reason I bring that up now is because Greatest Honor beat Tarantino a couple back. So by no means is that a knock on Greatest Honor. I just wanted to mention that Tarantino, I think, might have went out favored in the Jeff Ruby.
Yeah.
Greatest Honor, did he? It was close. It was close in the wagering, I think. I don't know if you know or not.
I don't.
But Greatest Honor, I'm not going to hold the race completely against him. I don't think it was the best ride. I don't think it was the best scenario for him. I think a lot of people did not think he was going to win that race because of the way it's set up. That said, honestly, nothing in the race really impressed me, truthfully. I don't know. I mean, I'm still going to give Greatest Honor a bit of a pass. Do I think the Soup and Sandwiches of the world and some of the other ones? I don't know. But then again, we've got to pick a winner from somewhere, right? So I wasn't that thrilled with the race, but that, my opinion doesn't mean that much. What do you think?
Well, I kind of thought if we were going to see proof that Greatest Honor fits in the Derby picture, I thought we would see it yesterday. And he just looked flat. I mean, he didn't have the greatest of trips. He was down on the rail, but even when he got free, he just flattened out. So I don't know what to make of that effort. He was not real fast in terms of what it takes to win a Kentucky Derby. He was not real fast coming into the race, and this did nothing to make me think he would move forward like I thought he would. So
well, the comparisons that will come will be two things. One, the excuse given is that maybe Shug didn't have him cranked to win the race. He didn't need to win the race. We'll see. I don't know what camp people stand in with that. That's a possibility. And the second thing, I assure you, there will be the comparisons to Unbridled coming because this was a closer, and Unbridled ran third, kind of an iffy third in the Derby, in the Florida Derby, came back and drilled him in the Kentucky Derby. So that comparison alone, I'm not tossing a horse at this point after that flat effort, but the Unbridled comparisons will be there, and I can understand why. I'll leave it at that.
Monarchos as well.
Exactly.
Ran second to Congaree in the Wood Memorial back in the day, and then he just he was flat in that race, and then he come back and almost set a track record in the Kentucky Derby. So
yeah, and again, Street Sense and the Bluegrass lost by a nose in a bit of a muddled finish. And all these three horses we mentioned, they didn't just win the race; they just destroyed them on the move, on the turn for home. And so, I mean, I could see Greatest Honor making that move. So I will not toss the horse. I will always have that in the back of my mind. And if you like him, his price just floated up to probably 9-10 to 1. So.
What about Known Agenda? That was quite the move coming off the turn for him and pilot Rod Ortiz.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that horse has upside. And you can't take anything away from it. I thought it was a fairly easy triumph. Maybe Greatest Honor did run fairly well, and the top two are just better than I'm giving them credit for. But it's Pletcher. Pletcher, it kind of seemed like he's had a bit of a quiet year from a 3-year-old standpoint, but he's going to have a couple stars in the Derby now all of a sudden, it looks like, right?
Yeah, I believe so. So this coming weekend is another huge weekend of prep races. We're going to see the Bluegrass at Keeneland. We'll also see the Santa Anita Derby and the Wood Memorial. Looking forward to the Bluegrass. We're going to see the potential Kentucky Derby favorite Essential Quality in there. And the other two prep races are going to be completely wide open. They should be fun to watch.
Yeah, is Concert Tour going to the Arkansas Derby?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the plan.
Because, what occurred to me is today is Concert Tour and or Essential Quality. Either one of them do not win their prep races. The odds board for the Derby just went to complete chaos. Because all of a sudden, by default, these two have moved to the top of the list. If they stub their toe, who knows? Right now, they're the pro temp leaders. But
last week, I was working on our Derby sheet, our top 11 prospects. I couldn't get past 4.
I know.
From 5 through whatever, they're all just they're unproven. So it's interesting. It's going to be an interesting Derby if it's going to be essential quality and concert tour versus everybody else as it looks right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And before we get to our guest, we do have to mention on Saturday our podcast partner, Mr. Brandon Jaggers, his filly won the Latonia Stakes, Dream a Little Dream of You, in a driving finish. Florence Giroux split horses late, and the filly got up, and now she's a stakes winner. So her value has completely shot up here in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, we're thrilled for Brandon. I know he enjoyed it. He and his partnership group loved it. They've been wanting that horse to run forever. Picked the right spot. It was a great ride by Florent Giroux. The horse looked like it might be beaten, but too much class, too much talent. Got the job done. And yes, Mr. Jaggers, we congratulate you, and way to go, sir. And I will add real quick, I want to say a fond farewell to Turfway meet. Everybody knocks Turfway. I'll be honest with you, it gets on my nerves. It was a great meet. I had a blast this meet. I thought it was fantastically done. It was a very formful meet, no matter what your cliches you'll see online say. Turfway was probably one of the more formful meets in the country, and I'm personally going to miss it, but I am looking forward to Keeneland because I'm a native Kentuckian. Why would I not be?
And speaking of Keeneland, our next guest is a fixture at the popular upcoming meet. Let's get to know him now. We are a mere days away from the 2021 spring meet at Keeneland, which means great weather and racing, and generally Kentucky becomes the happiest place on earth. Our guest tonight, who is very much a part of the Keeneland scene, is one who will need no introduction, especially within the borders of the state of Kentucky. His unique voice is familiar to those who bleed blue and follow University of Kentucky basketball and football. He began working for the UK radio network in 1989, running the post-game and call-in shows. In 1997, he became the radio play-by-play man for the Kentucky football team. And then in 2001, he was elevated to the coveted role as the voice of the Kentucky basketball program, stepping into shoes that at one time were filled by legends such as Kaywood Ledford and Claude Sullivan. He's been courtside for all of Kentucky's greatest modern triumphs and heart-stopping climaxes, including the 2012 basketball championship, numerous SEC titles, and several appearances in the Final Four. But his talents exceed more than just UK athletics. He's involved in the sport of kings as well. He's a two-time winner of the Eclipse Award for Excellence and has worked numerous broadcasts of Triple Crown races since 2016 for NBC Sports and Westwood One. He does exceptional work for Keeneland, ranging from trainer and jockey interviews to analyzing the races. In the Bluegrass State, he's a living legend, and we're happy that he joins us this evening on the Auxiliary Gate podcast. We're joined by Tom Leach. Tom, how are you doing?
Doing well. Glad that Keeneland's almost here.
It won't be long now, that's for sure. So, Tom, I'm gonna shower you with a bunch of compliments.
Well, we don't need to waste time with that.
I have to do this. I mean, Tom, in my lifetime, locally, we've been blessed to be able to hear a lot of talented radio voices. I'm talking, Marty Brenneman, Kaywood Ledford, Van Vance, even at the racetrack. That's our world. Kurt Becker, Luke Breitbosch, Mike Battaglia. I think, in my mind, you belong on that list of great and revered voices. So, congratulations, first of all, on a great career so far.
I know all the names you mentioned, they're friends. So that's some, I guess Luke has passed. So that's an honor to be in their company.
So I think it's interesting that your career somewhat parallels that of Kaywood Ledford. Kaywood, he crossed over from UK sports to horse racing. I mean, he was well versed in horse racing for sure. Do you ever hear that comparison about yourself?
No, well, I mean, I guess there's a connection, but I don't think anybody compares to Kaywood. So he's like in a class by himself for all of us that grew up listening to him as Wildcat fans. But yeah, we have that mutual affection for thoroughbred racing. I would always enjoy getting to cross paths with Kaywood on the backstretch, the backside at Churchill during Derby week. He was always doing in the 80s when I first started covering the Derby. He would do a special show for HAS TV in Louisville that in those days he had left the station to start his company in Lexington, but he would still do the Derby special every year for HAS. And so he'd be there on the backstretch every morning, and that familiar flat cap that he wore, and sipping his coffee. and you'd always run into K Wood, and he was always so gracious and just loved racing, loved talking about it.
Claiborne Farm named a horse after him, named Ledford. Have you achieved that honor yet? Has anybody ever named a horse after you?
Now, the closest is somebody named a horse Touchdown Kentucky.
Yes,
for the
I remember
football
that.
call, but they couldn't use all the jockey club rules. They couldn't naming rules. They couldn't use all the letters. So it was Touchdown space KY, and somebody on TVG called it Touchdown Kai.
So one of your most iconic calls was when Kentucky won the title in 2012, and you said, how do you count to 8? Count along with me. 3, 2, 1. I think those words will live forever in UK basketball lore. Did you spend a lot of time to come up with that, or is that, by any chance, was that spontaneous, or was there a story behind that?
No particular story. You always hope everything can be spontaneous, and 9 times out of 10 it is that day, because when it's a championship game, if the team you're following wins, then it's going to live on, as you said, for those fans forever, and because there aren't many championships, and that is why I gave it some extra thought. But I didn't want it to sound like it was scripted, so I just wanted to I thought about it during the day because I thought they would win. I thought, if this happens, what would be something that would kind of feel natural and everything felt like it was, scripted. And then finally, about halftime of the game, was walking back to my seat, and I thought, they're looking for 9, maybe just a countdown would sound okay, if assuming they're ahead in the final seconds and it's not coming down to a last shot. Because the thing about scripting something like that is you get too focused on trying to apply the script to the circumstance, and it might not fit. So that's at halftime I kind of got that thought that might work, and so I kind of put that away in the back of my head that if the situation was right, that would maybe be what I would go with. And thing is, you don't want to try to do you believe in miracles and the Al Michaels thing. You don't want to try to hit the home run. You just want to focus in that situation on making sure you get everything right, the score, the names, etc., because it's going to get replayed. And if you do something wrong, you mispronounce the name, you give the score wrong or something, then you have to live with it being replayed over and over and over again. So the first goal is just to get the basics right, and if you can come up, and the thing is, at the moment, depending on the circumstances of the game, you might come up with something that is better. But that's kind of how that played out.
That's like a 1975 Kentucky Derby when Chick Anderson called "Foolish Pleasure" "Prince Thou Art" in
right
the lane,
until the last stride.
Right. That Derby's replayed. It's part of Derby lore.
Now they wear, I think, entries in a race like that would wear at least something different. There'd be different caps or something. I think the jockeys were dressed identically, I think, in that race.
Yeah, something like that. But so it sounds like a lot of pressure on that. It would have taken me 3 years to come up with what you said. So I'm having a fanboy moment right now, getting to talk to you. But you spend a lot of time with what we consider household names, on a regular basis. At this point in your career, or any point in your career, did you ever have any fanboy moments of your own, just being around?
Oh, yeah. Just a K Wood in particular, and Ralph Hacker, Jim Host, really. I mean, because Jim was the guy that was ultimately going to hire me, so I was always a little nervous when I was the first times I was around him. If I was going to get the job, it was going to be him making that decision, most likely. And then Ralph and K Wood were both very gracious. When I was probably a senior in high school, I went to both of them with tapes, asking them just to critique and give me some pointers, and they both were kind enough to do that, and some really good tips at the time. I was secretly hoping, in both cases, that they would be so impressed that they would immediately offer me a job. And then I go back and listen to those tapes now, and it's amazing that they took the time, could even stand to listen to them because they were so bad. But they were very kind to do that. And thing is, it's like golf or shooting a basketball or most other sports, you have to be bad before you can be good, and you go through the repetitions, and you hopefully get to be better.
So when you were young, who did you try to pattern your calls after any particular announcers?
Not so much pattern, but just grew up listening to Kaywood more than anybody, Kaywood and Ralph doing the Kentucky games. And then also as a Reds fan, they had Al Michaels first and then Marty. And so I've always told students that I would talk to that, I had the greatest classroom because I was listening to broadcasters of that caliber on a regular basis.
So let's transition into horse racing. I understand you're from Bourbon County. That's kind of where thoroughbred breeding is kind of ingrained into society there. Was there ever any doubt that you would cross over into horse racing at some point in your career?
Well, I grew up on a farm, but it wasn't a horse farm. We had primarily cattle, hogs, raised tobacco, those kind of things. So, but two of my classmates from first grade on were the kids of John Soseby, who was the longtime legendary farm manager at Claiborne. And in those days, I was, I guess, in the 6th grade when Secretariat retired to Claiborne Farm. So, that was a big deal in our community, and, knew the Sosebys through going through school with two of the kids. And so just kind of got exposed to it early on through those connections, and with Secretariat coming to our town to spend his retirement years at Claiborne. And so, I was just really proud of Claiborne and a lot of the other farms. It was a Golden Chance farm, won the Derby in 1970 with Dust Commander, and the Preakness in 75 with Master Derby. So, those were, my dad was a horse racing fan, so I got exposed to it through him. I think he bet 5 across on Dust Commander. I always remembered that when I was a kid. And so, the Bourbon County horse won the Derby. That was when I was 9 when Dust Commander won the Derby. So those kind of impressions were made early. Had another family friend that was a farm manager at Elmendorf Farm, James Brady, and that was a very successful operation. They had a lot of great horses. So I was just exposed to the highest level of racing through those family and friend connections, and so became a fan pretty early on.
So let's talk about Keeneland, which opens on Friday. What does Keeneland mean to you?
First racetrack I ever went to, we had a neighbor that had a horse that was running at Keeneland, and so we went to watch the horse run, and it was like 35-1 and got beat a nose. And I remember my dad bet $2 across for me. So I got hooked early because we thought that it was at the first finish line. He was actually ahead, and first time to Keeneland, we didn't realize it was actually finishing at the second finish line. So he got beat a nose, but still we came out well ahead on the wager, and so that was a early introduction to Keeneland, and just the first, I think, media credential I was able to get as I was coming up in the business. I started when I was 16 working at the hometown radio station, and the first media credential I was able to get was Keeneland. And so I would cover the races, and Jim Williams was the PR director, and was a great guy to work with as far as learning how to cover the sport. Guys like Mike Battaglia, Tom Hammond, Kaywood Ledford all were around Keeneland covering the races. And so you got to learn from the best, from real pros. And that's kind of, I go back with Keeneland about as far back as I can remember.
So back in the fall, you hosted a podcast with Keeneland's Jim Goodman. Is that, I didn't realize that was a thing. I'm kind of sad because I want to hear all those. Are you going to do that again in the spring?
No, we do them every weekend. We do, Jim and I do a podcast. He picks the track where we do a podcast on the late pick 4 at a track where there's a major day or a major stakes race, and we do that for Keeneland Select customers year round. It's part of their handicapping products that they offer to their Keeneland Select customers, and so we do that year round. And during the race meet at Keeneland, we actually do it every day of the Keeneland meets in the spring and the fall, but otherwise we just do it for a Saturday where there's a big card somewhere around the country.
I understand that. Now I'm going to have to start listening to that because that's,
that's
very intriguing. Before I turn it over to Alan, any Keeneland memories that stand out to you?
Yeah, the first one was that the horse I mentioned that we went to see. I remember when Spectacular Bid won the Bluegrass in '79 and Aladar the year before. I was playing high school baseball at the time, so wasn't there either day, but was would have the radio there in the dugout, try to hear who was winning the race if we were in the dugout when it was running. We would don't tell my own kids this, but we would sneak out of school occasionally to get to the racetrack, and with buddies, we have game rained out, so we'd sneak out, go to the racetrack in the afternoon, and time to catch the daily double if we could, which was only the first two races in those days. So those are the kind of early memories I have of Keeneland, and just seen so many great horses over the years. I don't know if there's any one that stands out. I remember being there covering the races when the Queen made her visit to Keeneland in '84, I believe that was 83 or '84, and a Cherry Valley Farm horse, which was Seth Hancock's farm, apart from Claiborne. He had his own farm, and Cherry Valley won the race that was named in the Queen's honor with a horse named Sintra. And right. I remember being there in the winner's circle near where the Queen was making the trophy presentations. That was a pretty cool memory.
Did you get her autograph?
No. There were strict rules.
I imagine.
We were all well coached on those rules.
All right, Alan, take it away.
Yeah, Tom, you covered three of the diehard loves of my life for a living: Kentucky football, Kentucky basketball, and Keeneland racing. So my first question, and likely the most important one I'm going to ask you tonight, is can I have your job?
Not anytime soon, but you'd be welcome to go for it down the road. But I would prefer to hang on to it till I can finish getting at least my second child through college.
I understand. But in all seriousness, so you call games with athletes moving at a high rate of speed in basketball and football. So being a track announcer sounds like it'd be right up your alley. Has that thought ever crossed your mind? I mean, Kay Wood and Paul Rogers did it. It seems like you were
I've
born
never
for
had
it.
occasion to do it. I actually would like to do that at some point. It's nothing ever fits into the schedule. If there was a track that let's say Kentucky Downs at some point moved back into before football season, something like that where you could have a chance to call a boutique meet, apart from football season, would work, because basketball sometimes would carry over into the start of the Keeneland meet. So I've never tried it. I'm awed by the guys that do it as well as they do. Kurt here at Keeneland has been the only track announcer they've had. Travis Stone right now is excellent over at Churchill. And got to work on some NBC Breeders' Cup shows, got to know Tom Durkin, and he's as good as there's ever been. Kay Wood was outstanding at it. So one of these days I do want to, try it, just take a recorder or talk, call a race into my phone at, some track drive down to Ellis Park one summer day or, Belterra Park or something, and just try to do it, see if I am, have any aptitude for it, and then try to hone the skill so that if the opportunity ever does come along, I'd actually feel comfortable enough to try it.
Yeah, I like how you start out with Kentucky Downs. I mean, way to start the hardest one you could possibly start at.
Well, it would be all about timing.
You got that right.
It's like a 6-day meet that is, and it would, if it have to, might, someday be outside of a football season if they moved it back into August or something. So off the top of my head, that was about the only one I could think of where the timing might work.
That one would be challenging, but I'm sure you could do it. Switching back to, I guess, basketball, football, real quick. Something I bet a lot of us wondered over this past season and football season. But I think you were live for were you at the stadiums for football games, right?
Yes.
Or not?
Yes.
Okay. But it was the away games, if I'm not mistaken. You had to call from home, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we called from a conference room at Memorial Coliseum, where we had a big TV screen for any of the road and neutral games in basketball until the SEC tournament.
So were you and Mike Pratt in the room together? Were you?
Yes.
Okay. So
the two of us plus our engineer / producer Jim Barnhart. So it was just three of us.
How difficult was that?
Oh, it was. What's it? I don't know if difficult's the word I would use.
Limited.
I mean, there were times when like the video froze up or the screen went dark where you had a unique challenge, but that didn't happen very often. 3 or 4 times maybe in the whole season. But it's just you don't feel the energy in the building.
Right.
You want to be able to see the whole court, see the whole arena. There'll be times when be calling a game and ESPN showing some graphic, and I know they're balls coming up the court because a basket's just been made, and so I can't do anything about that until they come out of go back to the game on camera, and then they're in the front court. So things like that are frustrating, but I kind of made up my mind early. I wasn't going to get too frustrated or complain because I was grateful to have, because there was certainly a time where we didn't think we'd be able to have games or maybe even do them, that I was grateful to have the opportunity. So kind of tried to keep that attitude and see if we could just get through it. And, we did. We had tried to have fun with it and, roll with the punches.
So, but you probably prefer that we don't do that anymore, right? You probably.
You're correct. Yes.
Yes, I had a feeling.
It's kind of like the analogy would be I got to call a meaningful game in Memorial Coliseum in the NIT in 2009. And so, I'd called a few exhibition games in there, but I thought it was great fun to call a meaningful game, a postseason game in a building where I had so many great memories watching the Wildcats as I was growing up. But one was enough because if they're playing that game there, they're in the NIT, and that's not where you want them to be. So one was enough.
I completely agree with you there. With this Keeneland spring meet upcoming, do you kind of feel like, kind of in that vein, that there's a different air of excitement and anticipation about it coming up because we've got fans returning after the extended absence? I mean, we missed the spring meet last year. Does it kind of feel like maybe it serves as an unofficial signal that in the state of Kentucky we're returning to normalcy? Is there a different sense of anticipation this year with the meet coming up? It seems like it is for me, but I always look forward to it.
No, I think so, because I think we all are welcoming any sign of some level of a return to normalcy. We're not going to be all the way there for a while, but it's just to see some crowds in the building for high school tournament games in the last week or two, and we'll see them at the state tournaments coming up for the boys and the girls, and to see some people and hear some actual real noise from a crowd in the NCAA tournament games. That's been welcome, but it also just serves to underscore how much you miss the fan involvement and for the participants, and participants as broadcasters, participants as players, coaches, etc. How much that is takes on even greater value now, because you don't appreciate how much you need that until it's taken away. I was reading some blurb on Twitter last week. A horse had won a race at Turfway Park, and somebody was posting something. Anyway, the groom said he could tell the horse was missing hearing the crowd, and guarantee it's the same way for the human athletes.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. It actually makes me think something I wanted to ask you a moment ago and kind of forgot about. But as an announcer, we all know you're for the University of Kentucky, but you or any announcer, do you get disappointed, like if a last second shot goes in to beat Kentucky, or a team scores last second touchdown, do you have to hide that, or is it just you just roll the punches and do the professional job? I've always wondered about that.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly, because I grew up as a Kentucky fan, I'm disappointed if they lose and excited if they win. But I learned early on from people like Kay Wood and Ralph and Jim that, you're there to do a job first and foremost.
Right.
And so you can't get too excited and let that affect the job of giving all the particulars to the audience or the disappointment impact that. Just as an example, my high school made a run to the Sweet 16 finals in 1984, and I was covering the tournament at a press pass for the first two rounds, and they upset Ballard as a massive underdog in the second round. And I was sitting there in press row and loving every minute of this dramatic win and showing virtually no emotion in doing that because it's the job. So I said at that point, I'm going into the crowd tomorrow so I can cheer.
Yeah.
So, it's like the line at the end of The Untouchables where Elliot Ness has spent all his time, because Kevin Costner is the actor, spent all his time, preserving the law of prohibition, and then it was going to change. And they asked him, what's he going to do when they do away with prohibition? And he said, have a drink.
Yeah.
So, you do what you're there to do.
And I guess you have the color guys like Mike Pratt and Jeff McCurley. They get to celebrate, and you just kind of sit there stoically.
Yeah, but I mean, they're pros too. So I mean, they react maybe a little more, especially as former players. You're just, you've lived it, and it's, it's at a different level than those of us who didn't put on the uniform for UK or whatever school it might happen to be. So they feel it at a different level. So I know how they feel, but they're very much pros too, so they know they're can't get so wrapped up in the game that you forget to do the work.
Oh, they're fantastic. Feel free to pass on our regards to them because we love listening to them as well. A couple Keeneland things real quick. The opening Saturday of the spring meet is, if you're a racing fan, it's one of the great buffets of racing there is. I look forward to every year. I know CC does. I'm sure you do too. There's a litany of steaks that day. Which one of those traditional Saturday steaks do you feel like you look forward to the most in particular? Bluegrass, Ashland, Shakertown?
Yeah, I think the Bluegrass, just because it's a step to the Kentucky Derby, and there have been so many legendary horses that have won it over the years. And I remember a lot of seeing a lot of those races, and I remember when it was used to be on Thursday, 9 days before the Derby.
Mm-hmm, yes.
And so, like, again, coming up through high school, I was playing baseball while the race was being run. So as opposed to being able to go to it on a weekend maybe. So I think it would definitely be the Bluegrass.
And because you're on this podcast, we're going to have a lot of folks listening to this podcast simply because you're on here. And these are people who may not know as much about horse racing or Keeneland racing as some of our usual listeners. So I guess I'd say there's going to be some newbies because of your presence on here. A lot of basketball fans and football fans. What kind of Keeneland wagering advice would you give these newer folks if they decide to head out to the racetrack next weekend at Keeneland? What kind of good newbie advice would you give them? Something simple.
Usually the thing I tell folks is a good place to start is look at the horse's record at the track. That's something you can find in the program, the racing
at
form,
Keeneland.
And they're horses that have an affinity for certain tracks. And I think that's a good place to start. Years ago, I attended a handicapping class through a community education program that Mike Battaglia taught. And he was one of the things he said then was 10% of the jockeys and trainers win about 90% of the races. So, the men and women who are at the top are, and it goes along with their for a jockey with their agents too, putting them on the right horses. So some of it's there's a lot of it's their skill, some of it's the skill of the agent to make the right choice on putting them on the best particular mount. Some trainers point for the Keeneland meet. So some of those you can get deeper into the weeds on some of those stats, but just look at the the record at the track, and then also look, those speed figures are, whether it's a Beyer figure in the racing form or the Equibase figure in the program. Look for maybe a horse that is either steadily improving or has dramatically improved in a recent race. And a lot of times that's a signal that the horse is rounded into top form. And then the other thing you could do is look for a horse that is, because I'm always trying to find, value, find a horse that's got a better chance than is reflected in the odds. So look for a horse that maybe ran poorly last time and is paying too big of a price for that relative to his or her overall form on the odds board, because people tend to, we're all kind of prisoners of the present, and there could be a lot of different excuses that the people working with a horse don't even know at the time for why a horse ran a particularly bad race. And one time you can forgive that. Now, if it becomes a pattern, then obviously maybe there's something wrong with the horse or needs a little break or something. But anyway, start with the record at the track, and then just also look at wins versus overall starts. Some horses find a way, like teams. Some teams find a way to win. Some teams find a way to lose. So horses that I'd rather have a horse that out of 10 starts has 6 wins and no seconds and thirds than has 1 win and 5 seconds and 4 thirds and has been on the board all 10 times but only won once. I'd rather have the horse that's won 5 or 6 and then was off the board in the others.
Yeah, that shows a sign of a desire to win. The horse that usually runs second throw all the time don't quite have the heart, the mentality to win that the horse that likes to win does.
Kind of goes back to a line my first broadcast partner told me, Jeff Van Note, who played in a long time with the Atlanta Falcons, and most of his teams were bad. He said, winning is a habit, and so is losing.
Mm-hmm. That is true. And speaking of that, I love Kentucky football. I've been a fan since Fran Kersey, Claiborne, those guys. I'm 51 years old. So what you just said actually applies to Kentucky football. Am I right? Losing becomes a habit, winning becomes a habit, and they've learned to win. They're a lot of fun to watch, and I'm sure you agree with me. We might have a special season coming up. I think that every year, but I do like the team coming up this year.
Yeah, I do too. I think they're positioned very well. I think a lot of it will a big key will be how good the quarterback play is to realizing their full potential. But I give Rich Brooks a lot of credit, who became a big Keeneland fan in his time here.
Good.
And when Rich got here, Kentucky had that history of letting games slip away in the fourth quarter. And they found a way to come back and win a game when they were down 13-0 to Vanderbilt.
Right.
And Rich immediately had the sports information director look up and see where that ranked in terms of all-time comebacks in the fourth quarter. And it turned out it was the greatest fourth quarter comeback ever. Just 13 points.
Amazing.
And so he made a big deal of that, started to emphasize it because he could sense, he said that he could sense in the crowd the trepidation when Kentucky might be ahead late in the game, but the other team was driving. Mm-hmm. And so over the time that Rich was here, fourth quarter comebacks became a thing that Kentucky got good at and actually featured in their game notes. As so by the time from when he got here to when he left, instead of it becoming a moment to fear late in the fourth quarter, it became a time when Kentucky fans got used to their team finding a way to win.
Agreed.
And so you've seen a lot of more of those fourth quarter comebacks that continued with Coach Stoops. And so I give Rich a lot of credit for helping to change that kind of mindset that was there that the players could, I'm sure, sense.
And if I'm not mistaken, you wrote a book with Rich Brooks, right?
Yeah. Good guy, really good guy.
Yeah, he really is.
Became a big Keeneland fan.
Speaking, one thing about, I'll kick this back to Cece in a moment, but after this question, because again, Kentucky football, I've got you here. There's a lot of people that scoff and they think that the next season is going to be a particularly good season. Liam Cohen is taking over offensive coordinator. Are there any nuggets from spring practice you've heard so far that you could pass on or that give you reason for optimism?
Nothing that you guys haven't heard, because I haven't had the chance to get over and see them yet. There's not a spring game to prepare for this year. And after the basketball cats lost out in the SEC tournament. I used the unexpected free time to take a little vacation for the first time in a couple of years. And so I was gone for about a week. So I'm hoping to get over to spring practice here in the maybe next weekend or two and see a little bit of it. But normally I'd be also kind of doing it with an eye of preparing for the spring game, which they're using the facility there for testing and vaccines, and so they're understandably not going to disrupt that to play the game. But looking forward to. I like everything I'm hearing from Coach Cohen.
Me too. And the upside of that is there's more time for Keeneland if you don't have a spring game.
There you go.
Back to you, CC.
All right, let's before we let you go, Tom, let's talk about Saturday's Toyota Bluegrass Stakes. Looks like it's going to take on some added importance this year. Essential Quality is going to make his last start before the Kentucky Derby in the Bluegrass Stakes. I don't know if you've had a chance to follow the Triple Crown Trail, Tom, but do you have any opinions or analysis of Essential Quality?
Oh, I love his just determination, his grit that he showed last year. A friend of mine's a clocker, and so he had told me about how well the horse was training leading up to his first race. I think they're in September, if memory serves.
Derby Day.
Yeah, that's right. And so he, really finished up strong, and then came back and ran well out at Oaklawn. And I would love to see the Bluegrass produce another Derby winner. It's been too long since Strike the Gold won the Bluegrass and then added the Derby. And Street Sense was narrowly beaten in the Bluegrass and came back and won the Derby. But there have been several horses that have won the Bluegrass or run in it that came back and were factors in the exacta or trifecta at the Derby. But I would love to see a horse win the Bluegrass and then win the Derby again to do what Strike the Gold was the last horse to do.
All right, last question, Tom. Who wins the NCAA tournament?
Oh,
I would say Gonzaga's the likeliest winner.
Don't chalk out on me now.
But that's that's the chalk there. I think Michigan's got a real shot. I like their team all year. I really like what Juwan Howard did when he got that job and hired a guy like Phil Martelli to join his staff. And I thought that was a tremendous hire. It's worked well for them. And so I would like to see Michigan do well, and I think they've got a good shot. So I'll take Michigan. Rooting for Florida State because of Leonard Hamilton also. Right. And they play Michigan. Or I guess by the time this airs, we'll have played Michigan. So whoever emerged from that game hopefully can go on and get to the Final Four. And, hopefully Kentucky got so close to winning the championship with a perfect record back in 2015. I'd like to see Cal have a shot to make another run at that with the right team that comes along. And so, Gonzaga, there's a little part of me that's, maybe rooting against Gonzaga for that reason. But I have great respect for what Mark Few's done there. So if they complete it, I mean, you watch them play and they, it's kind of like a horse. There's the eye test and then there's the speed figures, and they do well on both. So they would be deserving if they pull it off.
All right. Well, Tom, this has been tremendous. I could listen to you read a phone book. I mean, this is a dream come true for me, and I'm sure it's for Alan.
Oh, there's no question.
So before you go, do you have anything you want to plug? Your website, the podcast, anything else?
Sure. The website's TomLeachKY.com, and people ask me, what do you do? When you're not calling games, and my year-round job is a daily radio show, the Leach Report, that's on about 30 stations around the state, and that's 9 to 10 Eastern every day. In most of those markets, a few of them tape in and run it a little later, but that's the Monday through Friday, 12-month a year gig, and so love for folks to tune into that and support that, and then be ready when the games start back in September.
Can't wait.
All right. Well, we wish you luck at the upcoming Keeneland meeting, and maybe we'll bump into each other at some point during the meet. And
we'll be there opening weekend.
That's a possibility now with people being out there was so weird last year. That summer meet in particular, where it was just so empty, and we realize how much we miss the fans at sporting events now.
I can imagine.
All right. Well, like I said, this has been tremendous, and Tom, we thank you for coming on. So until we meet again, like I said, good luck, and we'll talk soon.
Same to you guys. Good luck.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, Tom.
And that is all for episode 47 of the Auxiliary Gate Podcast. With Keeneland right around the corner, we hope we see you soon. But until then, remember that gambling money ain't got no home.